My name is Bonnie A. Rice. I'm 28 years old. Up until about 7 hours ago, I was in a relationship with my boyfriend Hunter. I say was because as of this afternoon, we are done in a way I do not think either of us can come back from. At least I know I cannot. I'm still trying to process the fact that this is my actual life right now, but writing helps me think. So here we go. I'm a software engineer in Austin, Texas. Hunter is 26 and works in event coordination for a mid-sized firm here. He used to do content creation on the side, and he has that kind of personality that fills a room the second he walks into it. I'm quieter. I build things. I like routines. I appreciate when people say exactly what they mean, and then continue meaning it the next day. Our friends used to joke that we balanced each other out. For a long time, I thought that was true. From pretty early on, there was a name that surfaced more than it should have. His ex-girlfriend, Lena. They had dated for about 2 years before us. According to Hunter, it ended badly. She was controlling bad with money, emotionally immature, all the usual post-breakup language people use when they want you to stop asking follow-up questions. He told me he was permanently done with her. Blocked on everything, zero contact. I took him at his word because that is how I operate. I either trust someone or I do not. But somewhere around a month, 4 or 5 little things started feeling off in ways that were hard to prove and impossible to fully ignore. He would angle his screen away when texting. He would take calls in the other room. Once during a Tuesday movie night, a contact labeled L called him. He silenced it immediately and changed the subject so fast it practically left a skid mark in the room. I noticed. I did not say anything right away. About 2 months after that, I asked him directly. We were in the kitchen. He was making coffee. I said, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Are you still in contact with Lena? He turned around and looked at me with this expression like I had accused him of something ridiculous. No, he said. Bonnie? I blocked her the week after we broke up. Why are you even asking me this? I just want to be clear on it, I said. We are clear, he told me, then handed me a mug like the coffee itself was supposed to close the conversation. So I let it go. I trusted him. Or maybe more honestly, I chose trust because the alternative would have required me to admit I was already seeing cracks and did not want to know how deep they went. Then around month 9, the contact L showed up again. This time as a missed call while his phone was sitting on the counter. I pointed at it. He glanced down, picked up the phone, and said without hesitation, That's my coworker Lauren. She probably needs something about next week's event. Then he put the phone face down. I looked at him. He looked at me. If you're going to say something, he said just say it. So I did. Are you still talking to Lena? His expression shifted, but not into guilt. More like irritation that a question he considered closed had somehow reopened itself. I told you months ago. I don't know why you keep bringing this up. Are you going to be one of those women who checks my phone now? I have never touched your phone, I said. Then trust me. That was the line. Trust me. As if trust is something you can demand after creating exactly the kind of atmosphere that makes trust feel expensive. Still, I backed off again. We were talking loosely about moving in together by then. There was a Tahoe cabin trip coming up in 2026, and I had fronted most of the deposit because that has always been my role in group settings. I organize things. I front money. I assume people will settle up later because I'm dumb in exactly that specific functional way. The trip group chat on iMessage is called Lake Tahoe Getaway 2026. 47 people. Mutual friends, coworkers, some of Hunter's work people, my younger sister Cammie, 3 of my cousins. It had been non-stop notifications all week. Rental cars, sleeping arrangements, food head counts, the usual pre-trip chaos. I was at my desk around 2:30 this afternoon when a voice message came through from Hunter in that group. I assumed he had misfired. We all have. I pressed play. What I heard lasted about 15 seconds, but it split my entire relationship open so cleanly it almost felt surgical. As precisely as I can reconstruct it, he said, I know, but honestly, I'm not cutting Lena off. I'm not doing it. She's the only person who has ever actually gotten me. Like really gotten who I am, you know? And Bonnie? God, Bonnie is so gone for me at this point that she would just have to accept it. She doesn't have a choice. Like I'm allowed to have women friends in my life. Okay, I'm allowed. She doesn't get to control that. And honestly, if she can't handle a friendship, then maybe that says more about her. That was the whole thing. No argument context, no setup, no distorted joke, just his relaxed voice, faintly amused, calmly describing his ongoing covert relationship with the ex-girlfriend he had explicitly told me twice did not exist in his life anymore. And buried inside it, the part that did the real damage. She doesn't have a choice. The group chat went silent so fast it felt loud. I watched typing bubbles appear and disappear. 47 people all staring at the same 15 seconds, all apparently deciding in real time whether to become involved in a train wreck that had already happened. My sister was in that chat, my cousin Jamie, my coworker Ryan, who sits 15 feet away from me, Hunter's own friends from work. I did not feel hot. I did not feel the kind of adrenaline that makes you want to call someone and scream. What I felt was cold and very precise. The kind of clarity you get when something you have been half-sensing for months suddenly takes a definite shape. I thought about calling him privately. Then I thought about the certainty in that sentence. She doesn't have a choice. The assumption that I was a fixture in his life, not a person making decisions of my own, that my loyalty was permanent, that my leaving was not even a variable in his mind. So I opened the group chat, I tagged his name, and I typed 4 words. Then we are done. After that, I left the chat. I drove home, changed my Instagram to single deleted, and every photo of the two of us did the same on Facebook. Then I blocked his number. Now I'm sitting in my apartment with a beer I am barely touching, waiting for some bigger emotion to arrive. Right now, it's just this flat, quiet sadness. The aftermath of something, not the thing itself. Maybe the bigger feeling comes later. I've heard that's how it works. I wasn't planning to write again this soon, but a lot happened in 48 hours. And if I don't put it somewhere, it just keeps replaying in loops. Friday night, I had a few more beers than I meant to, went to sleep early, and woke up Saturday to 23 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Hunter had apparently worked through every mutual contact he could find, trying to get someone to relay a message or convince me to pick up. My neighbor Marcus texted to tell me that a man had been standing in the hallway outside my apartment Friday evening for about 20 minutes trying to get my door open. I had changed the code about an hour after getting home. Marcus eventually stepped out and asked if he needed help. Hunter apparently said he was fine and left. Saturday morning, he came back. This time, I was home. I watched him through the peephole. He knocked not frantically, not angrily, just in this slow, methodical rhythm, like he was sure I would eventually decide to reward persistence with access. Then he pressed his forehead against the doorframe and said my name quietly. Not dramatic, just intimate enough to be manipulative. Bonnie, I know you're in there. I just need 5 minutes. Please, can you give me 5 minutes? I stayed where I was. Then came the script. The voice message was taken out of context. I was venting. You know how I get when I vent. I exaggerate. I still said nothing. It didn't mean what you think it meant. That line sat there between us, absurd and almost insulting in how little effort it took to say. As if I had imagined the whole thing. As if 47 people had all hallucinated the same sentence at the same time. Bonnie, he said again after a pause. You know I love you. You know this isn't. This is a miscommunication. Don't throw 14 months away over a voice message. Another long pause. Then, in a tone that changed everything for me, he said, You changed the code. Not hurt, not confusion, recognition. He had expected me to leave the door technically available, even after everything. That detail lodged in me harder than I expected. I did not answer once. Eventually, he left. I thought the social fallout was going to be complicated and probably lean in his favor. Hunter is charming. He has been in the broader friend group longer. I was prepared for people to decide this was private awkward and none of their business. What happened instead surprised me. By Saturday afternoon, 3 of Hunter's own friends had texted me individually. One just checked on me. One apologized on his behalf, which he absolutely had no right to do, but the instinct was kind. The third was Courtney, his college roommate's ex, and someone I had always genuinely liked, because she never played dumb when she saw something ugly happening in front of her. She sent me a long paragraph that changed the shape of what I understood. The substance of it was this. She had been uneasy about the Lena situation for a while. She had made the choice not to insert herself into our relationship and had been sitting with that decision since Friday and felt terrible about it. Then she said the part I kept rereading. You weren't imagining it. That sentence hit me harder than the voice message in a different way. Because betrayal is one thing, realizing part of you had already been collecting evidence and begging to be believed is another. That evening, my younger sister Cammie called. She is 24, taller than me, incapable of talking around anything, and one of the few people in my life who can say something brutal in a way that somehow feels stabilizing instead of cruel. You doing okay? She asked. Define okay. Like, are you in your apartment or did you do something stupid? I'm in my apartment. Good, she said. Then you're doing okay. There was a pause. I listened to the voice message 3 times today, she said. People kept replaying it in the chat before it got archived. I leaned back against the couch. What did you think when you heard it? She was quiet for a second. He talked about you like you were a service, she said. Like something useful he assumed would stay active, while he looked for something more exciting. I didn't say anything. Then she added softer. Not because you weren't enough, because he got used to you being reliable and stopped seeing that reliability as a choice, not a fixture. That one hurt because it was true in a way that explained too much at once. For what it was worth, she said she had always felt like Hunter loved the version of me that made his life smoother more than the version of me that was an actual person with edges and limits and choices of my own. That is not a fun thing to hear from someone who loves you. But it was honest, and honesty was starting to feel like the only thing that didn't make me nauseous. We were on the phone for about an hour. I started hearing through other people that Hunter was trying to push a different narrative, that I had overreacted, that he had been venting, that the message was taken out of context, and I had publicly humiliated him instead of giving him a chance to explain. That story apparently held for about 12 hours before collapsing under one basic structural problem. 47 people had the same 15 seconds of audio. You cannot outspin evidence that exists on 47 separate phones. From what I understand, several people pushed back on him pretty directly. It did not go well. Monday, my coworker Ryan took me to lunch. He is not a big talker, which means when he decides to say something, I usually listen. He set his fork down halfway through the meal and asked, "Can I say something slightly outside my lane?" "Go ahead." "In the time I've known him through you," Ryan said, "he always treated your reliability like a feature of his life, not like something he was grateful for, like a car that always starts. You stop noticing it until it doesn't." I just nodded because apparently everyone had been seeing pieces of this while I was still trying to make trust a virtue instead of a risk assessment. The Tahoe deposit situation has started developing its own separate mess. Derek, who is still organizing most of it, has been trying to redistribute costs so the whole trip doesn't collapse because I fronted more than most people know. I'm not trying to ruin Tahoe for 45 other people. I just want out. I officially withdrew and told him I'm not going, not negotiating, not trying to make the social geometry less weird than it already is. A few unrecognized calls kept coming in through Monday afternoon. I didn't pick up. I still haven't. And the more time passes, the clearer something becomes. That voice message was not him accidentally saying something he didn't mean. It was him accidentally revealing something he was completely confident I would tolerate. That difference matters. It changes everything. A lot happened after that, and most of it confirmed the same ugly thing from different angles. Hunter came to my office on Wednesday. My building has a glass front lobby. You can see clearly from the second-floor walkway if you stand in the right place. I was coming back from the coffee station around noon, half thinking about a migration problem in our codebase, when I looked down and saw him at reception. I stopped walking. There is a very specific feeling that comes with seeing someone you have mentally removed from your life, still moving around in the physical world, as if they have some right to access you. It is not fear exactly, more like your whole body going, "No, absolutely not." I stood there for maybe 4 seconds, deciding what to do. Then I went back to my desk and messaged Priya, our office administrator. I've known her since my first week at the company. She is one of those people who can shut down nonsense with perfect politeness, which is basically a superpower. I typed, "My ex is in the lobby. I'd really rather not go down there." "Can you handle it?" she replied. "On my way." About 6 minutes later, she came back to my desk and sat in the chair across from me, like she understood this deserved precision. "He's gone," she said. "What did he say?" Priya folded her hands. "He told the receptionist he was your boyfriend and he needed to talk to you. Reception said she had to check. I got down there before anyone called up. I felt my jaw tighten at the word boyfriend, not because it was technically outdated, because he was still trying to use old access language in new reality. How did he take it? She gave me this small, measured look. He asked if you had personally said no, or if I was just passing along a message. I told him it didn't matter. The answer was the same either way. That should have been enough. But then she added the line I have replayed more times than I'd like to admit. He said, I just need 10 minutes. She'll understand once I explain. She always understands. I stared at her. Priya leaned back slightly, and I wanted to get that exactly right because I think it matters. It did. That sentence, more than the begging through my apartment door, more than the out-of-context nonsense, more than the missed calls, laid the whole structure bare. He was not trying to repair anything. He was trying to reactivate a system that had always worked for him. Push, explain, reframe. Let Bonnie absorb it. She always understands. I thanked Priya. She got up, then paused like she was deciding whether to add something else. There was one weird detail, she said. He was wearing a ring, not a wedding ring, right middle finger. I don't know why I noticed, but I did. I filed that detail away without knowing where it belonged. At the same time, the Tahoe trip was developing its own strange little social weather pattern. Derek managed to redistribute the cabin costs without major drama, which honestly felt like a miracle given the circumstances. 2 people dropped out entirely, both from Hunter's closer orbit. I noticed that, but I didn't press it into meaning yet. Then Derek called Thursday evening and told me something that landed colder than I expected. Hunter says he's still coming on the trip, he said. I was quiet for a second. Okay, and he's bringing Lena. That part sat there. Not because I was jealous. That door had already closed, because it was such a specific choice. Derek kept talking. He announced it in the sub-chat, the one you're not in, and framed it like he wasn't going to let other people's drama stop him from enjoying a trip he'd looked forward to for months. I almost laughed. Other people's drama. She said they were just friends who'd been unfairly turned into villains, Derek added. I rubbed my forehead. What was the response? Mixed. Some people didn't say anything. A few were definitely not warm. Honestly, I think maybe 8 people are reconsidering the trip entirely. I haven't confirmed that. But the vibe shifted hard. Don't pull out because of me, I said. That's not what I'm saying, Derek replied. I'm saying the vibe shifted. People are making their own decisions. Then, after a pause, he asked me how I was doing with it. And weirdly, I was telling the truth when I said I'm okay. I just wasn't expecting the Lena announcement. It feels pointed. It is, he said quietly. That's exactly what it feels like. Around that same time, more context about Lena started circulating through the edges of the group. None of it came from me. That mattered too. A woman named Becca, who moved in adjacent social circles and apparently knew Lena through a separate connection, started quietly filling in blanks for a few people. I only got the shape of it secondhand through Derek and one other friend, but it was enough to be familiar in exactly the wrong way. Lena apparently had a pattern. Multiple overlapping entanglements, different women in different emotional compartments, lots of charm, lots of strategic ambiguity, lots of making each person feel specially understood while never letting any of them see the full picture. I didn't need the details. Lena was never really my problem. The relationship ended because of what Hunter said about me and the assumptions he made about my staying power. The rest was just supporting evidence that the world he chose over me was exactly as unstable as it looked. Work, meanwhile, had gotten genuinely interesting. There was a migration project I had thrown myself into partly for survival, and partly because code is one of the few things in life that at least admits when it's broken. Somewhere in the system, there was this nasty legacy interaction buried deep enough that none of the obvious fixes worked cleanly. My team lead pulled me into a meeting and said she wanted me on a new client project with more architectural responsibility. I said yes immediately. I was cooking more, running at night, sleeping slightly better, not well. Just better. And sometimes, usually when I was least expecting it, ordinary memories would surface and hurt with annoying precision. A dinner, a drive, a Sunday morning coffee. 14 months is long enough to build a rhythm with someone. Even when the foundation is compromised, the rituals still feel real while you're living them. That grief is real. I'm not pretending otherwise. But the clearer this all gets, the more obvious something becomes. The technological error was accidental. Everything underneath it was intentional. He didn't accidentally reveal a fear. He accidentally revealed a plan, a confidence, a working theory of me that said I would bend, absorb, stay. The trip was about 3 weeks away, and by then I already knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened in Tahoe, I was grateful I would not be there to watch chaos pretend to be chemistry one more time. It's been about 5 weeks since my last update, and I wasn't sure I was going to post again. There's a version of this where I just let the whole thing trail off and move on quietly. But Derek called me the evening after day 3 of the Tahoe trip, and what he described felt like it needed to exist somewhere complete. So here's what happened. Hunter went. He brought Lena, and by all accounts, the first 2 days were mostly functional in that brittle, emotionally refrigerated way people get when they've all silently agreed to be civil instead of honest. Nobody openly confronted them. Lena was apparently friendly and easygoing, which either meant she genuinely couldn't read the temperature of the room, or she could and simply didn't care. Hunter did what he always does in groups when something is unstable. He went into social management mode, filling silences, suggesting hikes, offering to grill, acting like enough movement could disguise structural damage. But according to Derek, people who knew him well could tell he was trying harder than usual. Nobody was welcoming them in. They just weren't pushing them out. Then day 3 happened. A woman named Becca arrived late because of a work conflict. She'd been expected, just delayed. Derek said the room went quiet in that accidental way rooms do when reality catches up to a lie faster than anyone prepared for. Lena was in the kitchen at the counter, with a drink in her hand mid-sentence in some conversation. Becca walked in with her bag over one shoulder, saw Lena and stopped. According to Derek, she set her bag down by the door and walked straight into the kitchen. No scene, no build-up, just direct movement. She stopped about 4 feet from Lena and looked at her. Then this happened. "I wasn't expecting you to be here," Becca said. Lena apparently blinked once and said, "Hey, small world." Becca didn't smile. "Is it?" Derek said. There was a pause, then the kind where everybody within earshot suddenly starts pretending not to hear while hearing absolutely everything. Then Becca said, "You want to tell me how many men in this cabin you're currently texting?" No answer, just silence. Then she said, "Because I can count at least 2 from where I'm standing. And I know for a fact you didn't mention either of them to the other." Lena tried to say something like, "That's not really fair." But Becca cut straight across it. "I'm not asking for a defense," she said. "I'm not here for a conversation. I just wanted you to know that I know, and that most of the people in this room either know already or are about to." And then she walked away from the kitchen and out toward the back deck. That was it. 90 seconds, maybe. No screaming, no dramatic glass throwing, no speech, just truth introduced into a room that had been avoiding it. Derek said Lena stood there for a minute, looking like someone had switched off the oxygen. Then she put her drink down, walked to the bedroom, got her bag, and left the cabin less than 40 minutes later. She didn't say goodbye to anyone, didn't try to spin it, didn't cry. Her car started in the driveway, and then she was gone. Hunter sat on the front deck by himself for almost 2 hours after that. No one went out to him. Derek was careful about how he said that part, and I appreciated that. He wasn't describing cruelty. A couple of people apparently considered checking on him, but in the end, nobody could figure out what honest comfort would even sound like. And manufactured comfort felt worse than silence. So silence won. He called me that night around 9 o'clock. I was on my couch reading and picked up on the second ring. "Hey," he said, "you are not going to believe the last 8 hours. Tell me." He walked me through it slowly. When he got to the kitchen exchange, I actually asked him to repeat it because I wanted to make sure I was hearing the structure of it right, not just the shock. When he finished, I didn't say anything for a second. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "I'm just really glad I wasn't there." "I know." Then after a pause, he said something I've kept thinking about since. It felt like I watched the last scene of a story I was never shown the beginning of. That's exactly what it was. I told him, because it was. Whatever else was happening between Hunter and Lena, whatever hidden conversations and overlapping promises and little self-serving narratives had built that situation, none of it was mine to solve or even understand. I had already exited at the only point that mattered to me. What happened in Tahoe wasn't closure. It was confirmation. We talked for another half hour after that, about completely ordinary things. His drive home, a work project he'd been avoiding. Normal life. It was a good call. Back in Austin, the apartment has started feeling like mine again. There was a stretch where the silence in here felt loaded, not just quiet, but shaped by absence in a way that kept making me look up like someone had just left the room. That has mostly passed. I repainted the hallway, which I had been meaning to do for 2 years. Went with a gray-green I like more than I expected. The new client project at work is genuinely the most interesting thing I've touched in at least 2 years. Distributed systems for a financial services firm, the kind of architecture problem that has enough depth to disappear into for hours without noticing time passing. My team lead confirmed this week that she wants me leading the design meetings moving forward. I stayed late Thursday, not because I had to, but because I wasn't ready to stop thinking about a problem yet. That felt important. My sister Cammie drove down about 2 weeks ago. We spent a full day out in hill country. Long hike, too much barbecue in Fredericksburg, watched a game neither of us really cared about. She didn't mention Hunter once, which was the right call. Saturday night after 2 drinks, she looked at me and said, "I'm proud of you. Not for the group chat thing, just for staying like yourself through all of it." That's the hard part. I told her I was not getting emotional over a compliment from my younger sister in a barbecue restaurant. She laughed. I laughed too. And it was the first time in weeks that it didn't feel like effort. That mattered because it told me something difficult had finally stopped being the main thing. There's one more small thing. There's a man on the design team named Vincent. We've worked adjacently for maybe 18 months, familiar enough to know each other, not close enough to have ever had a real conversation. Last week he stopped by my desk to ask a technical question. I answered it. Neither of us moved on. We ended up talking for almost 40 minutes about things that had absolutely nothing to do with the original question, which is usually a sign of something worth noticing. When he finally stood up to leave, he said, "Okay, I've now been at your desk for an embarrassingly long time, but do you want to get coffee sometime? We can pretend it's a work conversation if that makes it easier." I told him it doesn't need to be a work conversation. He smiled. "Good answer. I don't know what that is yet. I'm not trying to build it into something before it's had a chance to be anything." But I did notice walking back from the elevator after he left that I felt like myself in a way I hadn't expected this soon. Not healed in some complete cinematic sense, just present. Genuinely interested in what might happen next. That feels like the right note to leave this part on. Hunter texted from a new number 2 days after Tahoe. I didn't respond. It's been a little over 2 weeks since I wrote last, and I think this is probably the final update. Not because everything has been tied up neatly. It hasn't. Real endings are rarely neat. They just reach a point where the center of gravity shifts, and the thing that was consuming your attention stops being the main thing in your life. I think I'm there now. Hunter texted me from a new number 2 days after Tahoe. The message was short. No performance, no dramatic apology essay, no attempt at defending Lena or reframing the trip. Just, "I know I don't deserve a response." I just wanted to say I'm sorry for all of it. I looked at it for a long time. Not because I was tempted to answer, because I was surprised by how little it moved in me. A month ago, I would have dissected the wording, wondered what all of it meant, tried to decide whether this was guilt or strategy or loneliness or some combination of the three. This time, I just saw it for what it was, a message from someone who had finally run out of room to avoid the consequences of his own choices. I didn't respond. I haven't blocked their number yet. Not out of hope, just awareness. If anything escalates, I want the record. But so far, it hasn't. One message, then silence. And honestly, silence feels right. The apartment has fully resettled into itself now. That sounds small, but it isn't. There was a period after everything blew up where even ordinary objects felt charged. A coffee mug, a blanket on the couch, the indentation on one side of the mattress. I don't feel that anymore. The hallway is repainted. The shelves are reorganized. I moved the chair in the living room to the corner by the window, where the evening light hits it just right. And now I actually sit there and read, instead of just passing it on the way to somewhere else. It feels like my home again. Work has become more than a distraction. The financial systems project I mentioned has gone from interesting to genuinely absorbing. There's a complexity to architectural design that feels almost medicinal when your personal life has recently proven how unreliable people can be. Systems break, but at least they break for reasons. If you look carefully enough, the failure leaves a trail. That has been deeply comforting to me. My team lead officially looped me into the new client project. And last Thursday, I led the first technical design meeting. Not assisted led. I was sharp present, fully there. When it ended, one of the senior engineers messaged me privately and said, "That was clean. Nice work." That probably meant more to me than it should have, but maybe that's what recovery actually looks like. Not some giant emotional breakthrough, just the gradual return of your own competence feeling real again. Cami called me again this week. We talked about completely normal things. Her job, my project, a show we're both half watching and pretending to have real opinions about. Then, toward the end, she said, "You sound different. How like yourself," she said without forcing it. That one sat with me. 'Cause I think she's right. It hasn't all been linear. Sometimes a memory still catches me off guard. A song in a grocery store, a specific kind of coffee order, the little ambient hum of a phone vibrating on a table. 14 months of your life does not evaporate cleanly just because you leave a group chat and block a number. But what's changed is that those moments don't pull me under anymore. They register, they pass. They don't define the whole day. And then there's Vincent. Oui coffee. It lasted almost an hour and a half and had absolutely nothing to do with work after the first 5 minutes. We talked about architecture, not software, actual buildings, about why certain cities feel humane and others feel like someone built them while angry, about his grandmother in New Mexico, about the weird emotional life of people who solve problems for a living and then forget they are allowed to be messy and private. At one point, he made me laugh hard enough that I had to put my cup down. It was easy. That was the part that stayed with me afterward. Not electric, not intoxicating, not the kind of chemistry people write captions about. Just easy in a way that made me realize how tense I had been for longer than I knew. He texted later that evening and said, "This can stay non-work related if you want." I wrote back, "I'd like that. I'm not turning that into a grand statement about the future. I'm not doing that thing where you meet one kind person after heartbreak and immediately assign them symbolic meaning. He is just someone I enjoy talking to. That is enough for now." Derek and I had one more call too. Mostly logistics at first. Refund leftovers from Tahoe. Who still owes what boring details? Then, before hanging up, he said, "For what it's worth, I think you exiting when you did changed the entire shape of how people saw everything after. If you had stayed and argued and tried to keep negotiating with him, I think people would have found ways to stay confused. But you didn't. You made it simple." I've thought about that a lot because simplicity gets underestimated. People act like walking away quietly means you didn't care enough. Sometimes it means you understood exactly what was happening and refused to help someone blur it. That's what the voice message really gave me in the end. Not just evidence of dishonesty clarity. He didn't accidentally reveal a fear. He accidentally revealed his entire operating system. He believed my loyalty was permanent, my boundaries were flexible, and my leaving wasn't even a serious possibility. Once I heard that there was nothing left to debate, I know now that the hardest part was not ending it in the group chat. The hardest part was staying aligned with what I knew after the initial shock wore off. Not reopening the door because he sounded sad. Not letting other people's discomfort make me second-guess what I heard. Not convincing myself that being calm meant I should also be accommodating. Cami was right. Staying like myself through all of it was the hard part. And I did. I don't hate Hunter. That matters to me too. I'm not carrying around some huge revenge fantasy or secret wish for his life to implode forever. Tahoe already gave me all the confirmation I needed. The story he chose over me collapsed under its own weight, and I didn't have to lift a finger. There is something almost merciful in that. Not satisfying exactly, just clarifying. He made choices. Lena made choices. I made mine. And now we all get to live inside the structures those choices built. Mine feels good. That's probably the cleanest way to end this. Not triumphant, not devastated, not waiting. Just here in my apartment, in my work, in my own life again.